Okay, hi everyone. My name is Dario Bach. I'm CEO at Xapia, gold consulting company in Argentina, Latin America. I'm here with Daniel.
Hi.
Daniel is Salesforce architect from same company. You have our emails and Twitter just in case. We are here to talk about how to integrate Salesforce with Active Directory. We're going to do it one step at a time, so you learn exactly how to do it at home. OK, safe harbor. You know, everything you're going to see here is based on current functionality. We are not going to talk about future functionality or whatsoever. So just to get started, could you raise your hands, those that are Salesforce administrators, are actually working with single sign-on? OK. And in which companies are you guys using Active Directory? Or you know what Active Directory is about? OK.
Hey.
So you're going to get used to it. You're going to like it. First, we're going to divide this presentation in 5 pieces. First, we are going to do a very short intro about what's single sign-on, what's SAML, and why we need it, how do we use it. Then we are going to talk about the prerequisites to actually do this integration and run it at home. I'm going to talk about that. Then Daniel is going to show you a live demo how to configure this. So you're going to be able to see all the configuration, and we are going to show you a single sign-on working right now. After that, you can ask all the questions you want. OK, so let's get started. What's single sign-on? So basically, single sign-on, SSO, is a technique to log in and authenticate in multiple applications, but it actually uses only one user and one password. So it's a simple way to do your logins and to handle your passwords. It's easy for administrators and easy for users. You log in once, you use it everywhere. So just for those that don't know about this, what's Active Directory? Active Directory is one of the main pieces of the Windows Server architecture. It's a centralized and standardized system that will help you manage your users, passwords, permissions, hierarchies, etc. So for those that are using a Windows network environment, you're probably using this for all your users. When you hit user and password, you're actually authenticating in an Active Directory server. So again, we are going to use this. This is part of our integration. But why do we want to do this? Or what's the benefit of integrating Active Directory and Salesforce? First of all, when you do an integration, you mitigate a big risk that is having different applications and different passwords everywhere. So your users don't need to store multiple passwords. So you reduce the risk of losing them or stealing them. Also, you reduce the fatigue of users when they have to remember your multiple passwords. That makes them forget passwords. So as an administrator, you will be constantly having to reset passwords. When you have one password per person for all your apps, that doesn't happen. They remember it because it's the only password they have to remember, right? Of course, you reduce time for users. They don't have to re-enter password. Single sign-on can be used in 2 ways. You use the same user and password everywhere, or you can use one login and then move to another application without another sign-on. And of course, you reduce the administration costs. You will only, with this integration, you will only use Active Directory to administer your password. So if you have to reset a password, you just reset the Active Directory password. If you have to configure password rules, restrictions for size, whatever, you do it just in one place. So it's easier and faster. So what's SAML? Basically, it's a security markup language that will help you, or help the integration, sending security information between different parties. So it's based on XML. It's an open standard, so most of the applications can use it, like Active Directory and Salesforce, of course, and it will let us authenticate in one of the applications and use the other one. Basically, there are two parties involved. An identity provider is the application that will actually validate your user and password, and the service provider, that is actually the application you want to use, but you need to authenticate to use it. So SAML will help us using the single sign-on in an intranet or outside the intranet. So it's secure, it's encrypted. We can actually connect different parties like Salesforce in the cloud, Active Directory inside your intranet, send information between them in a secure way. Make sure you authenticate using local information, but without risking that information. This is a simple flow of the way it works. So the user agent is the Salesforce user, for example, and he's trying to log in Salesforce. So he would go to Salesforce, login.salesforce.com, and he'll try to log in. But instead of sending information to Salesforce, information will go the other way to the identity provider. Actually, Salesforce will redirect the user to the identity provider, and the pop-up with the user and password request that you will see will be from the identity provider, the Active Directory. From there, once you log in, and if the password is OK, you'll be redirected back to the Salesforce instance, and you will carry with you the information of your login, the SAML information. So basically, that information is encrypted and will validate you inside Salesforce, will let you log in, and you will be able to use Salesforce with Active Directory user and password. And the good thing is, if you inactivate an Active Directory user, you won't be able to log into Salesforce. So again, what can we do and how to do it? First, we need to configure the Active Directory as an identity provider. That will let us use Active Directory to log into other applications, Salesforce or any other applications. We will use federation services for that. We'll log in using Active Directory credentials once we're redirected. So this will give you a unified and simplified user administration and user login. It's actually the user that is going to one and the other application. It's not the applications communicating between each other. There's a trust relationship. We will see how to configure that, but it's not live. I mean, when you log in, it's not safe for sending information to Active Directory. You don't need to open that channel. It's the user communicating to both. So before we get started with the demo, let's talk about what we need here. Basically, we need Active Directory server. It's a Windows server, for example, 2008 R2. It's very important that we use a newest version like R2. The reason why is because we need to use Federation Services 2.0. Yeah, we cannot use 1.0 because it doesn't support SAML, so we need to upgrade it. Of course, Salesforce only has one version. You don't need to do anything. It's really simple, like everything with Salesforce, right? So let's get started. Let's do this. I'll let Danny show you how it's done, one step at a time.
Thank you. Hi. Well, as Dario just told, we need to set up both Salesforce and the Active Directory server. First, we are going to set up Salesforce. We need to set up first a domain for our org. Here, I already set up the domain for my org, so I can use this domain to log to Salesforce. And here, I have which authentication services I can use in this domain. Here I have chosen the standard Salesforce login page, and then the Zapier Active Directory server, which I already set up. The second thing we need to do is to set up the single sign-on. We need to activate single sign-on, and we need to create a service provider, so Salesforce knows how to communicate to that service and which information to send. To set up this configuration, we need the information from our Active Directory server. For that, we go to, this is our demo server, created specially for this demo. Here we need two pieces of information. The first piece of information that we need is it's found in the federation service metadata. Here in the endpoints, we have one with all the metadata of our service. If you enter this URL, you will find something just like this. Here, we need to take note of this value, the entity ID. The second piece of information is here in the certificates. We need Salesforce to send the information signed with a certificate provided by our server. So we are going to export this certificate. We are going to use this format. We put the name for the file, and with that certificate, we can go back to Salesforce and set up the service. So for this, well, first of all, as everything in Salesforce, we have to give a name and an API name for the service. Then here is the information we found in the metadata. Here we upload the certificate we export, and here we need to put we need to insert the domain we register in my domain. The other important part is how to relate the users in Active Directory with the users in Salesforce. Here we are using the federation ID field in the user object, and we are going to what we are going to set up is that the Active Directory send the username in the message, so we can match it with whatever we set up in the federation ID of the user object. The last part we need to set up is the URLs that Salesforce is going to send our users when they try to log. The first one is the login URL. This one is mandatory because it's the one that the user will be redirected to when they're trying to log. The second and third one are optionals, and they are used if you want to have custom pages for when the user log out, and if something goes wrong, to have a custom error and to avoid showing the user any standard Salesforce error page. Well, once we have everything set up, we need to download everything. This generates a file, an XML file, and with this file, we can go back to our Active Directory server. And now we are going to tell the server to trust whatever comes from Salesforce. So we are going to the relying party trust, and we are going to create a new one from the file we just download from Salesforce. Here we tell the Active Directory to use the information from the file. We choose a name. And then we can set this relying party to work for all users or some of our users. When we have our relying party trust created, we are going to create what is called a claim rule that it's going to tell Salesforce, it's going to tell which information the Active Directory is going to sell to Salesforce. Here I have a rule already created that we are going to send the user principal name, the Active Directory username, in the name ID to Salesforce. Once we have this set up, we can go back to Salesforce. And now, what we need to do is to, relate the users, our Salesforce user, to the Active Directory users. So, for example, I have here a test user, and the test user have a federation ID test user at sapia.local. This is the username of one of our users in the Active Directory server. With this already set up, we can go to, let's open an incognito window. And here we are going to, this is the domain I register in Salesforce. Where is it? And when I enter here, I have two options. I can log using the standard Salesforce page because I keep it activated, or I can use the service. All the demo is done in a development environment with self-signed certificates. When you use this in production, you need a commercial grade certificate to avoid these kinds of. It's not an error, it's a warning, but the users don't like this kind of warnings. I trust my own server, so I can go on. Here, this page is already in our Active Directory server. This is the most standard login page in Active Directory. From here, we can change this page for. We can add branding. We can change the way the page looks. We can do whatever we want. This is the most standard one. And here, it's asking me for my username and password from Active Directory. I have it here. This is exactly the username I configured in the federation ID in the user object. Then the path. And we are logged into Salesforce without using our Salesforce credentials.
Let's give it up for Danny.
One more thing before I forget. When you set the relying party, you can. The login into Salesforce works in two ways. One is when you go to login.salesforce.com or your domain, and Salesforce redirect to the login page or the service in this case. But you can also log into Salesforce with a link, for example, for an opportunity. If I have the link for an opportunity or an account or whatever link inside Salesforce, and I click in the link, Salesforce will prompt for the username and password, but because the Active Directory and Salesforce use different certificates, different algorithms for encryptation, we need to change here. The hash algorithm standard for Active Directory is 256, SHA-256. The problem is that Salesforce uses this one. And when you create the relay party trust, the default value of this one is this. And if you try to log with those links, an account link, an opportunity link, it won't work. And nothing, no error, no message shows any sign that you'll have to look in here. This is a common error, a very common error, and this is a way to avoid that one. You configure it in this algorithm, and with this you can log, go into the domain or using those links without any problem.
Very common error means it took you 5 days to figure it out.
Yeah, sometimes.
Okay.
Okay.
So, I don't know if you guys have questions. Basically, all the rest of the slides were just in case he couldn't do the live demo. So all this information will be posted in the chatter feed next to this session when you access it. So if you have any questions, raise your hand. No? Sure. Do you have a mic?
Excuse me. Do you have a mic for the questions?
Thank you.
No problem.
So let's suppose I was a user, desktop user. I've already logged into my Active Directory using some other resources. So as far as my sign-in process, I've gone through that. Now I'm trying to visit a Salesforce link configured with single sign-on. Would I have to sign in again, typing my password, or somehow it will detect that I'm already signed in?
That depends on how you configure your Active Directory server. Some servers are configured that once you are logged, the server already take those credentials and send them to Salesforce or whatever service provider you're using automatically. So you don't have to insert the credentials again.
That doesn't mean you're not. I mean, Salesforce is still taking you to Active Directory, but instead of showing you the screen, actually redirects you to Salesforce once again.
It's like you have the same happens when you are open another tab in Chrome, for example, and you are already logged into Salesforce. That's why I chose to show it with another tab, with a private tab. So I log with another user at the same time. This is the configuration in the Active Directory can be set up to automatically send the credential if you are already logging, if you are you have an active session. Another question?
Yeah.
So how can I choose which users can log in?
You have two options. First, first in Salesforce, you set up this federation ID to set up which user match with your Active Directory user. So if I delete this field and I try to log again, it will fail because no user in Salesforce is matched with test user at sapia.local. On the Active Directory, when you create the relaying party, you can set up which users. No, sorry. When you create your relaying party, you have the option to you have like two major options: or allow all users, and then if you don't want some user, you check them out of the rule, or you deny all users and then include whichever you want.
But of course, if that user does not have a Salesforce user or the federation ID is not there, it won't work. And let's say you quickly, I don't know, you fire someone. So this is very practical, because if he doesn't longer work on the company, you just go to Active Directory, inactivate the user, and it won't work.
One more thing that is important. Salesforce has if you have your user, for example, this user that I was using as example, if I deactivate this user, it doesn't matter if the federation ID here, if the password is correct. If the user is inactive, the user won't be able to log. And one more thing when talking about users, when you set up which services are available in your domain here, I have the option to remove the login page as a standard as a service, as an available service. If I deactivate this option, the only way that my users will be able to log will be using the Active Directory credentials. This gives an extra layer of security, so the credentials in Salesforce stays in Salesforce and are never used. We only log using Active Directory.
Any other questions? Yeah.
How does it relate to the Salesforce identity tool? Is it a different process if you're using identity? Is it
Salesforce? The Salesforce identity is a separate product. It's used to integrate more than one Active Directory in Salesforce, more than one service, more than one. This is also, let's say, standard in Salesforce, but it's used when you have only one service. One identity provider, one service, and you only want to communicate with that service. Let's say you can do that with Salesforce Identity. Yes, you can, but it's like a much bigger product for a very little need. Let's say
you have broader options, ways to integrate, products to integrate. This is very basic SAML that actually works with Active Directory. That's the first thing you want to do. But if your configuration for single sign-on or identity in general becomes more complex, you may want to try and see identity.
Have you ever used identity? Have you ever set it up through identity?
We haven't done this through identity, no.
Yeah. One second.
Just so I understand,
okay.
Going back one. If you have the login page enabled and you've disabled someone in the Active Directory, they can still get in through the login page.
Yes.
Correct?
True.
You have to disable them twice.
Yeah,
Exactly.
That's why if you really don't, I mean, if you really want to have, if you really want to use Active Directory, you should disable the standard login for that URL. Yes, true. Works on mobile. Yeah. You will actually be redirected to a page, so you will see it going, but it will work.
If you plan to use this on mobile, the page the URL, you need to configure the Active Directory to have, let's say, a responsive HTML, so you don't have like this ugly pop-up to ask for the credentials.
Yeah, please remember that the page we just saw can be customized in any way you want. That's Active Directory stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
This is a developer instance, so yeah, you can do it anywhere.
And you can do it in yeah.
Yeah, you will probably need to create multiple permissions in Active Directory for every server. I mean, for every sandbox.
Of course. You need to configure, download the metadata, and create a relying party trust for each Salesforce org.
And when you guys start with this, do not remove the Salesforce login until you are really done with it,
working.
Because you don't want to break stuff and you won't be able to log in. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Oh, sorry.
More questions?
So when you're dealing with sandboxes, what do you do with sandbox refreshes? Do you have to create a trust relationship each and every time you refresh, or?
Yes.
Yeah, you do.
Any tips on dealing with that?
When you do the refresh, you lose all the configuration. You lose the relations, because the way that this works is that every message is signed, and every time you refresh the Salesforce, the resulting message already encrypted will be different. So the Active Directory won't recognize the new message.
I never tried this, but perhaps if you check metadata, every time you refresh, if you run like an automatic process like Maven or Ant, you may be able to resend the information, so you don't have to do it manually every time.
Maybe.
I imagine you should be able to do this with a continuous integration stuff like Hudson, whatever. Okay, so
thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Just in case, this is our information.
No.
Oh, that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.